Hey everybody, it's Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flammang, and with me as always is Jamie Uyeyama. Jamie, Thursday before Cow Week, how are we doing?
I think we're doing pretty good. I mean, we'll be a lot better if the Irish weren't 0-2, but aside from that, feel like doing all right. Looking forward to this week's game.
I am also looking forward to it. Right off the bat, I apologize for my eye. I got scratched on my like eyelid, and it's all swollen. I thought it might be pink eye, but it isn't. It's just a little bit swollen. So that's why my eye looks a little bit weird today. But that's okay. We're gonna get through it, just like Notre Dame's gonna get through it against Cal this week. So um, we've he conquered the millennial pause. Thank you, Brendan. He Brendan always gives me a hard time about my production imperfections. So I endeavor to please him. So yeah, thank you, Brendan, for that. All right. So real quick, all right. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Irish Sports Daily's Hit and Hustle show. As always, we're going to be talking about the game, the Cal game. We're going to be talking about. I have got some thoughts about where Notre Dame can go from here, and the prospects of Notre Dame playing good football. I guess I think just listening to not listening to the discourse and kind of viewing the discourse of the last few days, I think people have taken too negative a view on the state of Notre Dame football right now, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on that. But as always, check out IrishSportsDaily.com. Jamie's Six Thoughts on a Thursday has come out. It's a banger, as always, and everyone's always very interested in that. So I suggest everyone checks that out. As a reminder, after the game on Saturday, there's going to be a post-game show. I will not be on this one. I've got soccer game kind of obligations that I need to do. I got all three kids in soccer at the same time on Saturday, so I will not be on that. But Jamie will be on it with Mike Frank, and then I will always have my morning after show on Sunday. I will be doing that, so you're going to want to stick in for that. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe button on this channel so you can get alerted to all those things that'll all pop up in your feed, and hit the like button if you like what you hear. All right, let's get into this, Jamie. Now it's Drew Pyne takes the reins is how I titled the show. What are your expectations for? I say young Drew Pyne because he hasn't started that much, but what are your expectations going into this game for Drew Pyne?
I mean, I'm not too high, but also not too low. I know there's a lot of Notre Dame fans who think of like the last time they saw him and saw that pick. They saw they think of the blue gold game, and they don't have high expectations, and I don't think they really should, really. But I think what they should expect is a guy who's competent, a guy who's going to prepare really hard. I think those last couple instances aside, I think he's going to be a guy who makes pretty smart decisions. I think he's a guy who can run the full offense. This is his third year at Notre Dame. I think he's someone he's proven to be like a smart, hardworking guy. I think there's obviously some physical limitations in terms of like, he's not a guy with a cannon arm. He's got a good enough arm, but he's not a guy with a cannon arm. So his arm isn't going to bail him out of a bunch of situations. He's a good athlete. Like, he can escape the pocket, but he's also not going to, be as dynamic as a Tyler Buchner. At the same time, I think you can run. And I think people took this the wrong way when Marcus Freeman said it. They're like, oh, they're going to run the same offense. And people were like, oh, great, because the offense hasn't done well. But it means like they're not going to limit anything what they do, right? Like, they can still run zone read. And, is Buchner maybe has a chance to break one where Pyne might not. Maybe, Pyne might be able to move the chains, but maybe not break a long one. But he can do a lot of the things that Buchner did as an athlete. And then also, I think probably be like a little bit further ahead in terms of the passing game. And that's what I would expect.
Yeah. And I think there's some things that need to be made clear here. Notre Dame obviously loses the dynamic legs from Tyler Buchner, and that's true. But I think Tyler Buchner didn't do himself any favors against Marshall. The reason that his legs were so necessary, and the reason that was Notre Dame's only offense in that game, really like consistent offense, is because he was making poor decisions with the football. And if he was making better decisions, and if he was hitting the throws that were available to him, then he doesn't have to be running, because Notre Dame is moving the ball other kinds of ways, right? And that was the kind of the point of my the video that I put out Wednesday. And if you haven't checked it out, I was talking about fixes for the offense, and how it's not that Drew Pyne needs to be a dynamic quarterback in terms of his arm and making plays with his arm, right? He doesn't have to be Kyler Murray. He doesn't have to be Johnny Manziel, running all over the place and making incredible throws and crazy passes and that sort of thing. Hit what's available to you. That was the thing that Tyler Buchner wasn't doing. He did not play a good football game from a passing standpoint, from a decision-making standpoint. And so that's why I think people have gotten it kind of twisted. Like, Notre Dame is losing something in Tyler Buchner, but that's kind of in theory in terms of his dynamic play as a passer. I think we all we knew that we knew that he had a live arm. We knew he had a strong arm, and we knew he can make throws. He can make throws that Drew Pyne can't, but he wasn't making those throws, right? That had never become apparent yet, right? He needs to be able to hit look to the right side. When I say the right side, I mean the correct side. Look to the correct side when they're sending a blitz and you're hitting your hot read, right? You got Jaden Thomas in the flat, and they hit him in the flat, instead of looking over to the other side where the defense is dropping and we're almost throwing a pick six again.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think one of the things with Buchner too, that, and I think it's something that shows his inexperience, right? Where, his first read is not there. And so you saw the one where I believe was a third down. Michael Mayer was on the boundary. He got jammed off the line, didn't get a good release. That was going to be his primary. And then, boom, he throws it to Styles. They convert, whatever, right?
It was I want to say it was the second play of the game.
Yeah, very early in the game, right? Very early in the game. And so that kind of thing is fine. And obviously that wasn't like a bad decision or anything like that. But I think you saw some of these other things where, at least for me, where he's like going off and like his first read's not there. So he's like, I got to get it to my second read now. Like, it's clock in his head where he's trying to get rid of the ball. And even if that one isn't a good decision, like he's just thinking, I got to get off to my next read. And then he's throwing a ball that it's like, that ball shouldn't be thrown. So it's like, he's not, even though he's moving to a second read, he's not processing it the way it should. And it shows how difficult it is to play quarterback and all of these kind of decisions you have to make like in an instant. But I just think so much of his struggles as a passer have to do with inexperience and him, not kind of understanding the full picture. You could say like, maybe he understands it on a whiteboard. Maybe he's like good in practice, but it's like it's a different thing when you're doing it within a game. And so I didn't see any of that from Tyler Buchner. And, we can't make a determination on him as a quarterback after 2 games. And obviously he didn't get much help. At the same time, I wrote in 6 Outs today, like there was nothing that made you that you saw from him that you were like, man, this guy is really going to be it.
Yes.
Or, and where maybe you saw some good things in the, in terms of like, he handled himself pretty well in the Ohio State game. But I mean, there were also things he didn't do well in that game. And then when you saw against Marshall, you saw, there were things that he definitely didn't handle well. Right. And yes, he should have been helped out on like, both those picks, right? Like those were receivers got to help him out. Those were, not good routes, right?
The receivers have to help him out, but he shouldn't be throwing it there anyway.
No. Yeah. Yes.
That's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's and that's the main point. And there's stuff that it's, it's a little bit hand in hand where it's like, there's stuff that he can do better. Also, there's other ways that Tommy Rees can help him. So I think because of what you can see in this game, where I think Pyne is probably going to be, we're assuming he's going to be better with some of those decisions in the passing game. And also, I think he's also going to get the added benefit of, I think Tommy Rees is going to help him out a little bit more and call a better game.
Right. And so to Brendan's point, losing the legs means you can't rely on them anymore. So you have to come up with something else, right? Like, so you're not gonna call a quarterback draw on 3rd and 9.
Well, they didn't call that in the Marshall game, so that was very specific to. But
by the same token, right? In the I can't remember what play it was, but it was the pick 6 drive where they have trips to the field. It was the same play. They have trips to the field, and then they motion Estime out at pre-snap, and he's going wide, right? Buchner can throw this ball. It was the 2nd down play because the 3rd down play was the pick. It was 2nd down play. He can throw it. Swing it out there.
Yes.
They had 3-on-3. Swing it out there, and you can go, right? And I noted that in the video. And the other part is put Tyree in there, please, and have him do that.
Yeah.
You're thinking about ways to get Chris Tyree involved. If you're running a swing route.
Yes, that's not an Estime kind of thing, because you're like, Estime, make this guy miss in space. That's not his game. That's not his game, and that's not helping him. That's not helping the offense. And I think that's one of the things with coaching too, where they can be helped out, like personnel usage. Like that's a big thing. It's a very, very important thing. And I thought in something that not just with Buchner, but with Pyne too, like I think there's ways to move the pocket, especially when you have some guys who aren't, maybe blocking as well as they should. Move the pocket. Get those guys, give those guys options. And you saw that a little bit with Buchner, and you saw that with some of the boot stuff and whatever, but like, it doesn't always have to be like a play action too, even though he was successful play action, like, some sprint out stuff, some other things to move the pocket, get him to be an athlete, threaten the defense that way. That opens up some things maybe in the passing game. If not, he has the opportunity to run. Excuse me. And you could do that with Pyne too. And that's something that and frankly, you're going to have to, because if you sit Pyne back in the pocket, everybody knows he's listed at 6 feet. He's not 6 feet tall, right? So he's a guy who needs windows. He needs windows to be able to throw, just like any kind of shorter quarterback. And that's always the tougher thing with the shorter quarterback, is that he needs to be able to find windows, movement in the pocket, whatnot. But if you do that all game, that makes it really hard, because things are going to get congested in there. And if you make it easier, the reads get easier, decisions get easier and stuff too. So I hope they do a little bit more of that this week.
Right. And the reason that I said, on Twitter and in kind of promoting this video and this show is that it's not that this isn't that tough of a task, because all the things that we're talking about Drew Pyne needs to do, Tyler Buchner would have needed to do these things.
Absolutely.
Notre Dame isn't losing something that, Buchner was doing X. How does Pyne replicate that? Like, no, Buchner wasn't doing it either. They needed to do this stuff. They needed to get better decisions from the quarterback. They needed to move the pocket anyway. They needed to do more play action, no matter who the quarterback is.
It didn't matter who it is. Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, like, the mistakes that I saw in the game are knowing where to go with the ball, Drew Pyne can throw the slot fade. Drew Pyne can hit that post to Braden Lenzy. Drew Pyne can do that. That's not outside of his ability, right? So the plays that are being missed, Drew Pyne can do. Okay. Now, if it's all like legs, like if it was all legs, or Notre Dame's offense was breaking down and then Drew and Tyler Buchner scrambling out and throwing a cross body and hitting a perfect post route, then no, Drew Pyne can't do that. But everything else, all the stuff that's being missed, and that was my main takeaway from the game, like watching it over and over again. It's like, man, this stuff it's not super complicated. They can get this, right? Tyler Buchner can get this. Drew Pyne can get this. Now, if Drew Pyne comes in and makes the same poor decisions, now we have that's the real problem, right? If we don't have a good decision maker at quarterback. But that's not a case of the offense per se. Right? This isn't the case of like Tommy Rees doesn't know what calls to make. No, he knows what calls to make. his quarterbacks aren't executing them, which is his responsibility.
Yes,
the quarterback coach.
It's tied in with him. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, this isn't like giving Reese a pass on that. And I think that's what he talks about. Like when he says, I take full responsibility, it's like, well, yeah, because you're in charge of it, right?
Yeah,
so
the whole operation.
And so just to kind of get it off of Pyne for a second and talk about the defense, because I think we view the defense in a certain light because they're 0-2, but frankly, they've been good enough to be 2-0.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but there are
certainly played a lot better than the defense in the first 2 games last year.
Correct. Right. And now I put that on Twitter too. Like the Toledo game, the numbers against Marshall were actually better.
Yeah.
So tell me about like the defense and where you think the defense can go, and what changes you think that can be made there as far as like playmaking and that sort of thing.
I mean, Bert's just kind of bringing it back to those first 2 games. I thought they had a pretty good plan in both those games, right? So I think when you're looking at it coaching wise, in terms of getting these guys in a position to win and do these things, I think they had a pretty good plan. I think when you look at, say, like the breakdowns late in both of the fourth quarter drives that were, kind of like nails in the coffin end of the game kind of things, those were more like missed tackles, whatever. And I know people just automatically be like, it's got to be the strength and conditioning coach. It's like, I mean, that's not what guys got to make a tackle, right? That isn't, this guy didn't do enough, sprints in the summer, right? Like that kind of thing isn't there. So there's, certainly an execution part, but I think more of that is on the players. I think though, like, that's the one thing that and we talked about it on our Tuesday show too, right? I think the main thing with the defense for me is there's too many times where they are in second and medium, right? Second and medium, third and short. Like you're not putting enough pressure on the opposing offense. And that's because you're not creating negative plays on first down. So whether that's like even just like batting down a pass at the line, whatever it is, right? Getting some kind of negative plays, they're not doing that. They're not doing enough to cause that. And while they're doing an outstanding job at not giving up the big plays, and that's great, obviously that's what you want. It's like probably, goal number 1 is to make the offense work hard to score and put points on the board.
Right.
So in order to do that, if you give up, it's like everybody knows that if you give up less explosives, points go down, right? So they've done a good job and the points haven't been up, right? But, you can also get more 3 and outs. You can create more turnovers. They haven't created a turnover yet. All of these kind of things. If there's a little bit more aggressive, they don't have to be like crazy, like, like cover 0 blitzes on early downs or anything like that. But like, and they don't even really have to blitz really. It's doing more movement up front with the defensive line, whether that's slanting, whether that's switching alignments late, whether, stemming, doing some of that stuff, maybe some early down stunts, stuff like that. Like things to kind of change up, confuse the blocking schemes a little bit because it's just a little bit too straight up. And the thing is, and it's something that I mentioned with Mike yesterday when we were doing our show last night, is that Notre Dame's defensive tackles, for the most part, right? Like they don't have like a War Daddy in there. They don't have a Dexter Lawrence, right? They don't have a Jerry Tillery in there. They don't have a guy who's just going to dominate at the point of attack after all. Even though like in that game, I think Howard Cross was kind of close to that, but like you're not going to expect him to kind of do that all the time, especially when you're going against really like better offensive line, right?
Right.
But here's a perfect example. This week you're playing Cal. Their interior 3 guys, they're not good. They're not very good. Make those guys work. Make them move. Make these like big, fat, slow dudes move. Because if they have to step laterally to try to pick someone, they're not going to be able to pick them up. So if you're moving Jason Adonalola, you're putting him in a better chance to succeed if you're doing that kind of stuff, right? And obviously you don't do it every time because you don't want to get caught in a bad, run fits, whatever. And there's things that got to marry with that in terms of what you're doing, with your backers and your safeties and all that kind of stuff too. but you want to be able to create more negative plays. You want to get to 2nd and 13, right? You want to get into these situations where, and if you're not able to kind of just blow up and a guy just drive a guard into the backfield and then come off and make a play, then you got to do a little bit more with that. So whether it's run blitzes, mix some of those in more, movement up front. I think they got to do that more. They got to put the defense in a better situation to not. So even if it's like, even just to have those 3-and-out drives instead of the 7-play drives where they got to kick it, and then that messes up the field position and all that kind of stuff too. So that to me is the main thing that I think that I need to see from the defense.
Yeah, and there's been a it's like Al Golden said, like, look, we're 0-2, it's not good enough, right? And a lot of and it's one thing to say like they've been playing well and they can, and they have, right? They have been playing well. But it's like you said, you also do want to set up your offense. You do want to give them, short fields, right? Get that pick, get that strip sack where it's like they have 20 yards to go and not like 60 or whatever it is, right? With all the fair catches, right? Like, oh, we're fair catching the ball again, right? And so, okay, like when you're doing that stuff, it's because you're backed up and it's like, okay, now the offense has to drive the whole field. I do kind of take exception to like the whole, like they gave it up when it was, when the game was on the line and that sort of thing. Because here's the other thing. Here's the thing. The game is always on the line. All the possessions count, right? It's not just the fourth quarter. And here's another example of like, okay, Notre Dame's gotten a bunch of stops, right? It's 12-7. Okay. In the fourth quarter, they get the ball. Notre Dame gets the ball. They go down and score. They get 2-point conversions, 15-12, right? People forget there was a whole possession after that. Like Notre Dame stopped Marshall. Then they got a good punt return and it got the ball on the Notre Dame. I think it was 44. Okay. 56-yard drive to score a touchdown, to go up 2 scores and maybe ice the game. Right. And it doesn't get done. Like the game was on the line then and they got the stop. They got the good field position and it didn't pay off for them. Right. And then they give up the drive and then it's like, oh, you guys blew it. It's like, well, it's like, look at they got the stop. And then, and so it's like the offense also has to like, you only have 15 points. The game should be long over with, right? It shouldn't come down to a fourth quarter drive. You know what I mean? So like you get all the stops until you don't get the stop. And it's like, oh, we gave up the stop when the game mattered most. Like the game is always mattering. Like they all count, so go ahead.
Sorry to interject, but I just wanted to bring this up because it's something that I was listening to Justin Wilcox talk about their game against UNLV earlier in the week. And obviously they're on the other side of it where, first of all, UNLV is a much worse team than Marshall. Although they're improved from last year. I think they, they got some talent, but they're a much worse team than Marshall, and Cal almost lost that game, right? They almost lost that game. And he was, asked about, at the end, and you worried up, they got a drive at the end and it was close. And they were just saying, and he was saying, it's, yes, this happened, but exactly like you said, they called the game different if we are up and we took advantage and we scored on our red zone opportunities because they, were not good in the red zone in that game on offense. And if they did that, then all of a sudden, when you're down 2 scores or you're down 3 scores, the game is called different. You can't do certain things, right? And that's something that the defense has never had the luxury of having at all, this season. So, and that changes, and that's certainly like when they played, say, Purdue at the end of last year, in the end of that game, and how they were up a certain amount. Well, that's when like guys like Foskey and in the defensive line, I mean, they can go off because it's like, well, they're gonna drop back every time, so we can just like pin our ears back and go, right? Like, so that kind of dynamic that matters too. So it is like there is a complementary football. That, I mean, that is really like the biggest problem, if you say like for Notre Dame, is that they don't play very good complementary football.
Right. Yeah. So let's go through a couple questions. I'm going to skip around. Michael McGowan, I'm going to get to yours in a second. Mr. Sanders, game plan too complicated. Both like sides look slow and lost. I actually don't think it's complicated at all. It's just the defensively, especially, like they come out and they got what was it, 2, 3?
Is this just me?
consecutive
I don't
stops?
think the defense looks slow and lost at
I
all.
don't either. It's
I
not
don't. I
that.
don't get that.
I think it's more of just like they're not making the plays. They're
Yeah.
not making those game-changing plays, those
Yeah.
game-wrecking type plays.
Slow and lost would be like they're giving up the like a 70-yarder, and you're like, where's the safety on this?
Right, and they're
Like,
turning people loose all over the
yeah,
place and
you don't
stuff.
see guys get turned loose in the secondary. You don't see any of that. Even really like on that 42-yard run that they had at the end of the game, that wasn't like a total bust where it's like, oh my God, that gap wasn't covered. No, it was like Botello missed tackle, Maris missed tackle, Joseph missed tackle, Lewis missed tackle, like 4 missed. I mean, if you make one of those tackles, it's a 16-yard run instead of a 42-yard run, right? Like, or if Patel makes a tackle, it's a 2-yard run, right? Like, so that to me is not slow and lost. That's just like make a play, like you said, exactly like you said, Greg. Make a play, do it, step up and make a play.
Right, and on offense, like I think their plan coming out was fine, right? They got a first down. They were throwing the ball. Tyler Buchner has Jaden Thomas on a slot fade that he misses, right?
I mean, if
Second
that throws
and 10,
on, it's probably a touchdown. Yeah,
it's at least a huge play, you know. And so then that's a good call, right? Second down, they give the ball to I think it's either Estime or I think it was Estime, and they give it to him on the outside zone or the pin and pull, whatever it was, to the boundary. And yes, they're blitzing from the outside, right? They're blitzing from the field side. Buchner could pull it, but also you're running away from the blitz. If you block it up, it should be an explosive. Blake Fisher turns the defensive end loose for reasons that are unknown, right? We don't know why he did that.
Also, the second and long run call, as we
don't
all
love
know.
it. Don't love that.
Don't
but
love
the point is like the play is going to work if it's executed, right?
Yes.
He's going to hit the seam. There's going to be no one left. Everyone's walled off. The receiver on the boundary is walled off. He's going to get there. It's going to be at least a 10-yard game, right?
Yeah.
Don't block it. Okay. They don't block it right. Okay. And then on the next one, 3rd and 11, you got man coverage. Lorenzo Styles is coming open and they blow a blocking assignment and Buchner has to scramble away. You know, it's like it's not the plan. It's like they're missing assignments. You know, they're not holding up their end of it. So, and that's the difference between I have a good plan and I have good plays, and we are executing it. And they do need to be ready to execute the game plan, and that is again on coaching, right? If you can't execute the game plan, you practice it all week. That's a coaching mistake, right? All right, I'll get to this. It's kind of a tough one to answer just because it's kind of it's big picture, like macro. We're going back like a decade. Why has it been so hard for Notre Dame to attract and develop effective 4-star quarterbacks with multiple playoff appearances and big O-line, tight ends, and wide receivers to surround them? Frankly, I don't think the wide receivers, O-line, or tight ends have been a problem. So I'm not sure if that's the statement that's being made. The quarterback thing, I mean, it is true that it's been Notre Dame hasn't had a first-round pick at quarterback since Brady Quinn. He was at the end of the first round, and he was not a first-round pick caliber, I guess, as shown by his pro career. So, what do you have like a not 30-minute answer as to why do you think this is?
Well, one, I think with this quick on the receivers, like look at the last few years at receiver, and everyone will point back. Well, man, Claypool and Boykin. It's like, and you know what I mean? Like they haven't had those guys. Like maybe if Kevin Austin stays for another year and he's healthy and whatever, but like, you know, Avery Davis is a good player, but even if he was healthy this year, he wasn't going to be a high pick, you know? So they don't have those type of receivers to just attract, like, you know, and they didn't recruit good enough, and they don't even have the numbers this year. That's like a problem. So that's part of the issue of maybe attracting those guys. But I think the quick answer is that, and you have to look at Tommy Rees, and not just him, but like Brian Kelly and the staff in general, all the people who work behind the scenes, the personnel, but you know, Tommy Rees has made like, the guys that they landed, like Buchner was an early guy, saw him in camp, loved him, took him, right? Got him. Pyne, he was the only guy they offered that year. Took him, right? Like, Angeli, it was him and Gavin Wimsatt were the first quarterback offers of that year. So, yeah, it is a value. It partly is a valuation. I mean, I don't know. Angeli could end up being a star. Like, any of these guys could end up being really good. Just as of right now, you don't see anything. So, and it's fine. You should go on your own evaluation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You shouldn't be like following recruiting rankings to say like, this is the guy. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, they haven't landed a guy and evaluated to the point where it's like, well, this is this guy, or maybe they didn't want to get involved in the game with some of like the Trevor Lawrences or whatever, because they're like, we're not going to land them. Maybe this guy's looking for a bag. I don't know. Right. Like maybe that's part of it, but I mean, they just did it with Dante Moore. And I think that was obviously a good evaluation, and they're going to get him, but he was looking for something else, or his family was looking for something else. So, I mean, what can you do in that situation? Like that was a guy who was a good eval. He was going to be the top guy. I think he's going to be a really, really good college quarterback. Some might say he's the best quarterback in this class, right? Like he's certainly up there. So, but then they went for it and didn't get him. So, I mean, it's, what are you going to do unless somebody swoops in with a huge bag for Notre Dame?
Yeah. Yep. And that's not holding my breath. Thank you, Joseph, for following my wonderful tweets. A 34 game win prediction. It stinks. I'm fine with that. Do you know what that tweet is? What that reference is?
No. This is supposed to be for his career wins or what? Like,
no. So yesterday there was a lot of, I mean, all week, like there's been a lot of kind of discounting Drew Pyne as a player and that sort of thing. And so I made the point that it's funny that if he goes on to win 34 games, which is the reference to Ian Book, right?
Yeah.
So the tweet was, if he goes out and wins 34 games, but doesn't beat Alabama and Clemson in the playoffs, then all the people who say he stinks now are going to say he's not good enough, right?
Which is probably true, yeah.
Which is it's not probably true. It's absolutely true, because we've already seen it. It's already happened.
Yeah.
And so the point that I'm making is like and then a bunch of people like got on my mentions that were like, I don't want Ian Book back. It's like, of course you don't, right? Because thank you for making my point. Like we like,
but you take him right now, and if you
take him right now,
because you'd be stupid not to.
Because Drew Pyne is coming in, no one expects anything. Everyone thinks he stinks, and it goes out. Let's say he goes out and wins 10 games, right? But then next year it's 11-2, and the year after that it's 12-0, but you lose in the playoffs again. Like, and people will say, well, that's not the standard. They need to do something better than Drew Pyne. It's like, dude, you think he's not good. Like people already think he's not good. It's like so that's the thing with Drew Pyne is like, it's like we would 100%. It's
like a no-win situation.
Yeah. Right. He would 100% love it if we came in and played exactly like Ian Book did in 2018. We would take that 10 times out of 10. But then the goalposts will shift. It's like, well, you're not a playoff winning quarterback. So that was the point of that. So thank you, Joseph, for shouting that out. And by the way, like as a total
aside, good point.
As a total aside, like I was listening to the I can't remember what's the Rivals one Tyler and Eric Hansen do. I can't remember what the name of their
Inside ND Sports. I think
Inside ND Sports. I was listening to their pod and someone asked them if Phil Dracovic would be 2-0 with Notre Dame right now.
Have you watched Phil Dracovic?
He just lost to Rutgers, man. Yeah. Like people think he is so good, and it's just like it did not work out. Another poor eval.
Well, I mean, here's the other thing. This is why sometimes I wonder, and I'm not saying there's like a million great Notre Dame fans out there, but there's always people that I'm like, I think they just ask questions because it's just like they look for the alternative. So this was at the end of our stream with Mike last night, but somebody asked, like, compare Marcus Freeman's start to Ty Willingham. I mean, Ty went 8-0 and then was like lazy with no personality, and then it went downhill. And Marcus Freeman is like a super hardworking, great personality guy, but he's 0-2.
Yeah.
There's like no comparison. It's like the exact opposite. So why would you bring it up? Well, I know why I'd bring it up, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just people just, I'm like, they don't even pay attention. It's like, they don't even remember. I guess you weren't a fan when Ty Willingham was the actual coach, or else you'd know what the heck is going on. Like, those are just dumb questions. I don't get it. Like, but everybody's just like, they're searching for, and I get the point that people are searching for answers,
Right.
and they're just like looking for something else. And like, well, what if we do this? And it's like the whole, you know, like what I mentioned before earlier, the man, Notre Dame should have signed Tommy Shoot. You know, it's like there's always the what if there with a lot of people. And I totally get it, because there's always situations like that, or like, you know, oh, I mean, one of the big things was in the linebacker, Notre Dame should have took Cody Simon. And at the time, I still believe they should have taken Cody Simon, because they didn't take a linebacker in that class. And it was like, look at the depth there and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, Cody Simon isn't balling out for Ohio State right now. So, right. I mean, in hindsight, whatever, you can go back and be like, well, they were right. But it's like, I still think they were kind of wrong. They should have took a linebacker in that class.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Sanders, I want to make this, we can segue on to Cal. So Cal game going to tell us a lot about team and coaching staff. I'll be watching with one eye open. Maybe I will too, because my eye's all messed up. So tell me about Cal, Jamie. I know they have a very good defense. They have good inside linebackers, and they don't have a very good offense. So that this should be a low scoring affair, probably, at least on paper. So
I believe the total is 40.5. So, and I think I don't know if I'd bet on it, but I would say like probably bet the under if you're going to do that, based on the offenses. I guess it's, start with their offense first. They have some talent. They have some talent at the wide receiver position. Like, Notre Dame fans would remember J. Michael Sturdivant was a guy that Notre Dame liked, offered.
Wide receiver.
Yeah. Big guy. And he's been pretty good for them so far. I think he's going to be a good player for them. He's not a star right now, but I think he's basically their number 2. They got a really good deep threat. They have, they have a couple guys who can make some plays. A tight end's pretty good. Running back wise, Jaden Ott is a 4-star kid, very talented, really can make you miss. Has looked good in these first 2 games. How much is that because of they're playing UNLV and UC Davis? I don't know, but I think he's going to be a good player for them. And he's going to, already he's like a biggest part. He's their leading rusher, averaging 6.5 yards per carry. They throw the ball to him a lot. Like, they're trying to look for matchups for him. Right. Mm-hmm. So he's a good player. Quarterback, Jack Plummer was a Purdue guy who was Purdue's quarterback, lost the job last year. Obviously didn't play well against Notre Dame last year. And I think this is probably going to be a situation where I would find it hard to believe he's going to play well against Notre Dame this year, because I don't think their offensive line is very good, right? Like, they have the problem where they have like too many guards on the thing, where so like the guy who's their best guard, who was a good guard, has to play tackle for them. He has to play left tackle, and it's like, well, he's kind of playing out of position, and then the guys they have at guard aren't that good. So, I mean, I think it's by far the weakest O-line Notre Dame will have played so far this year. So Notre Dame should have a pretty big advantage up front in that game. And I think that's one of the reasons too, they've really struggled to kind of run the ball, other than Ott just like making some guys miss and doing some things. And then they've been bad in the red zone too. But, defensively, I think it's just, you look at, they're well coached, right? They're well coached. I think there's a lot of similarities with Notre Dame, where they don't give up the big play, right? And they've just traditionally done that under Wilcox and Peter Sermon, who's the defense coordinator. They've worked together for years and years. And, like you said, good inside linebacker play. They got a couple edge guys that I think are pretty good. Miles Jernigan, he's got some quicks. Xavier Carlton was a transfer from Utah, really just big, super long guy who's got some quicks too, could play inside out. And so they're decent up front, but, and on the back end too, they're just solid across the board. They don't have any stars. They're just really solid across the board, but they make you drive the field, and they make you, do these things. They're not going to cause a ton of havoc, but they make you drive the field. And for Notre Dame, when you look, and they haven't executed very well so far, maybe haven't coached that well so far. Or, well, not maybe, they haven't coached so well so far. And you got a new quarterback there. You could see how Notre Dame, there could be some ugly drives in this game, right? So they got to be kind of patient, pick their spots, hopefully hit some of these plays where they didn't hit, like last week. Because if they do hit a couple of those plays last week, the game changes, right? So
yeah,
I think that's going to be the key to the game, if they can kind of do that. Because I think, too, if you get up on Cal, if you get up a couple scores on Cal, I think the game's over. I don't think they have a good enough offense to really like come back and be consistent enough to come back. So that's going to be key for this game. Yeah,
just make the plays that are available. It's not they've been scuffling. And look, it's one of those things where it's a good thing that I think Notre Dame is mentally prepared now for the game to be close. I think they're like, okay, especially, backup quarterback and that sort of thing. It's not going to be like, oh, we haven't scored yet. Like, oh, people just aren't tighten up or anything. I think they're ready now for, it's like, okay, these games are going to be a dogfight. And so I think that's good for them. And so it almost like, I think the backup part of it too kind of loosens things up a little bit. Like, I think it'll get guys, especially on offense. Like, I think it'll get them to be like, okay, like I need to be a more of a playmaker, right? It's not up to the quarterback to make the play for me. Like, I need to be the one who actually makes the play and picks the team up and that sort of thing. It kind of reminds me in a way, just like a matchup wise, like the Wisconsin game last year, where neither team has a really good offense. Cal's got a really good defense. Notre Dame is stout on defense, at least from keeping points down. And it could come down to like, special teams play. Or,
like that Chris Tyree kick return kind of changed that game.
Yeah, right? like a one or two plays, like a big play that could kind of change how the outcome
is. And then
is.
Graham Mertz obviously basically threw them the game after that.
Right, exactly. So you stress them, you put him in some stress, and he wilted under that. So I think that could be how it goes, hopefully, right? Of course, it could go the other way where, they make the play that kind of blows open the game. So, yeah, that is true. I did notice Lenzy has 2 tackles and he has 2 catches. He's 2 of 11 this year targets. They need to, it's interesting. It seems like he's perpetually being missed. The last 2 years, I feel like he's been there. There's been opportunities and they've either missed them or, he obviously dropped the one in the end zone against Purdue, against Jack Plummer's team. So I just feel like that needs to click. And the more games we get into this, it just seems like, oh man, is this ever going to happen? Because you feel like there's all this potential, but.
Well, I think part of it is how he's been used, right? Like, and I wrote about it in 6 Thoughts that like the contested catches, like he's just not a guy who's proven that he can win those. So you shouldn't be throwing those. There shouldn't be a design in the thing where it's like, well, we got to if we got to move the sticks here, we got to throw 50-50 ball to Lenzy. I mean, he's only catching 20% on the 50-50 balls. So it's like, it's not a good mix, right? So I think that's part of it. And then I think if you look at like, I think he had 32 catches last year. And I don't know the percentage number that it was, but if I would guess a high percentage of those were like hitches or comeback routes. Like not a lot of other stuff mixed in there, right? So I think when you look at like, how he's used, and so the example of just like a play in the open practice that we went to, right? And obviously there's no pads, whatever, but he beat Cam Hart on a slant, caught it in stride, took it for like 40-yard gain, right? So I think like those kind of plays where you can get him like running in space and using his speed. He's one of the fastest guys on the team. That's documented. You've seen him make like 50, 60-yard runs in games, right? Like he's not without talent. Like he's someone, and they need that. They need that kind of talent. I think he just needs to be used differently. Like, how about some of that jet sweep action with him? Like, feels like a good idea, like change, his menu is, what they're serving him isn't working. Change up the menu, do some things, give him more of an opportunity to, be successful.
And, like I think the quarterbacks need to think about the way they throw him the ball. You need to give him a ball that he could run under. Like the fade where it's they called it on fourth down and he throws a jump ball and Lenzy does a good job catching it, but he throws it out of bounds.
Yeah,
you got to put some air under it. Let him run under the ball. Like he's a speed guy, right?
yeah,
And even the post route, like that's not putting air under it. Like it's a line drive pass, right? You can't. It's hard to run under a line drive, right? If you're going to throw it out there, throw it up so that he can run under this thing. I don't know. It just seems like the way that he needs the ball thrown to him, he's just not getting it thrown to him that way. Thank you to Mike M, who is a Cal fan in the chat. Thanks for tuning in, man.
Wow, he's jacked up. I think there's never been anyone who else has been excited about Cal football as Mike.
That's right. And you know what?
Let's go, man. Let's go, Jeff Tedford. Let's go.
We will not fire our coach. We will not. I mean, I don't know, man. Are you coming in here telling me your team is a terrible football team? We need to fire the coach because we beat them. I do think this is true. I think Notre Dame needs to lean into Chris Tyree, upperclassmen, right? To me, it's like, look, you got to lean into the experience and lean into the guys who are the accountability angle, right? Get him in the game. I'm not saying that Estime or Diggs shouldn't get the ball. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you need to lean into your pedigree, and B, your experience, the accountability aspect, and also lean into the skill set, right?
Yeah.
He's explosive. It's not like he's he's an upperclassman who's like a Joe Schmidt type thing. Like, no, he's an explosive football player.
I think it would be different if they were blocking like they were in 2020, and they were being able to kind of run it downhill with some of that kind of stuff. Then I'd say, Estime could be the workhorse, but kind of as it is, until you kind of show like a lot more on the offensive line, I think it's not really helping the team. And it might be, and I just think based on what you said, like too, and the veteran aspect of it. And when it comes down to it, like in terms of picking up the blitz as receiver and all that kind of stuff too, Tyree has really I would kind of approach it is that I think that he might get the most snaps, but you have to find ways to get him more touches.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, lean into the skill set. That's what Notre Dame ought to do. All right, Jamie, you have your prediction post. Have you turned it into Mike yet?
I haven't turned it in.
He's gonna yell. He's gonna be on the text stream.
He is. Well, I'll tell you what. This is how I know that I'm always the first person in, because I email it, and then Mike sends to the thread, send in your predictions, because he forgets about it. Because he knows, because I'm the first guy who does it. So I always do it right after I get done. I'm going to send it in. I'm going to tell you right now, Notre Dame. I'm picking Notre Dame to win the game. I won't give the final score, but I'm saying I'm picking Notre Dame to win the game. And I mean, I do think they will cover too. So it's 10.5 right now is the number, I believe. I'm going to say
24-13. That's what I'm going to say.
That was going to be my pick. So where you go? Like, 24-13, 11, they cover. So there you go.
Yeah. All right. So you heard it here first. All right, folks. That's going to do it for today. Talked about the team, talked about Cal, talked about the way Tyler Drew Pyne can succeed. I think Notre Dame has the tools for it. I think they've got the game plan for it. I think they have what's in the offense to make Drew Pyne work. So we'll see how it goes. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We will be back on Saturday recapping the game, the post game, Jamie and Mike Frank. I will be back on Sunday, as always, for my morning after show. You're going to want to tune into that. Tune in to irishsportsdaily.com for the picks. See if anyone else is if everyone's going for Notre Dame or if someone's going to go in for Cal. I know Matt's not afraid to do that. We've got a nice little recruiting weekend. We've got Tayshawn Lyons is going to be on campus. You're going to want to check in on those updates and everything. And if you liked what you saw today, and if you haven't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and we will talk to you guys next week.